Hi, Carlos Batara here in another on our ongoing series of simplifying and demystifying immigration law. Today, I want to discuss permanent residence through marriage. As I've noted in other videos, there's a common perception that this is probably the easiest way, perhaps the most guaranteed path to a green card. That may well be. There is no real guarantee, but that may well be true in terms of this being an easier path, somewhat easier path. But there are some major pitfalls. There are some major stumbling blocks. There are some major problems. And in this video, I want to quickly address those. There's 5 here that I've laid out that I would really like to discuss with you to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of making any of these. The first one is that your marriage must be real. By that, I mean it must not be false. Let me give you an example of a real marriage. Now, when I was a rookie attorney, I was in my first year of practicing immigration law, I had a couple and I prepared their immigration papers, and they fooled me. They fooled me because it was not a legitimate marriage in my mind after the interview. After the first interview, I could tell something was vastly wrong, that it was not a real marriage. In legal terms, we call that not a bona fide marriage. I was furious. When we got outside the meeting room, I told them that I didn't think that it was a real marriage, that I thought they had duped me. I thought they were trying to fool the immigration service. And then the second interview, which the immigration officer said they were going to set up, that really they were in real danger if they were committing fraud. Well, I never heard from them again. And I pledged to myself that day that I would never again be caught in that situation, that I would never again be duped like that. And now, 2+ decades later, it's true. I've never been caught in that situation again. It was a rookie mistake. It was that I had not seen through some of the signs that I probably should have caught right at the start. But I was a rookie. And no harm, no foul. They disappeared. They dropped their case. I never heard from them again. But that's what I mean by not a real marriage. It's a fraud. I don't know if you heard about a year and a half ago, there was a woman on the East Coast that didn't get caught till her 10th marriage. She was marrying for money. And somehow she had gotten through the officers 9 times. I don't know if she had given them different names or what, but you would think somewhere in the fingerprint process of the husbands or somewhere, she would have been detected. But it wasn't until the 10th husband that she got caught. And I'm sure by now that probably all 10 husbands have been deported or they're in jail, and that she's probably serving some kind of prison term. It was unreal. I read the story, I said, 10 times? How'd that happen? Real marriage, bona fide marriage. Don't commit fraud. Absolutely don't commit fraud. The second one is a legal marriage. Now, a legal marriage is a marriage that it's bona fide, it's real, but it's not legal. So how does that happen? Well, I had an individual once who had a divorce from the Dominican Republic. And so he married a woman here 20+ years later, and he sought to immigrate her. They went to their interview, and the officer said, "This is not a legitimate divorce certificate." Now, the officer, having been trained in looking at divorce certificates from various countries in Central and South America, spotted it right away. This person thought he was legitimately divorced. He thought he was legitimately remarried. He wasn't. The marriage, in a sense, was real, but it wasn't legal. He wasn't divorced. You can't remarry if you're not divorced. So he had to go back. He came to my office. We had to go back to his country, pull the documents, talk to his first wife, file for a default divorce here in California, and make the divorce real before ICE could come and grab his wife and deport her. Fortunately, we were able to do it. In another case, an individual came to my office, and he already had his wife and stepson in deportation proceedings. Why? For the same reason. He did not have a legitimate divorce. But they had went so far, and they didn't even think of fighting it until way after the wife and the child were sent to immigration court. That's what can happen when it's not a legal marriage. So be careful about that. You may think you're divorced, but make sure. And that happens because like a lot of people, a lot of immigrants or a lot of spouses, they just want out of the marriage and they cut out. They live in Kansas and they move to New York and they think the divorce is over and the other spouse handled it correctly. Well, maybe it wasn't handled correctly. Maybe the other spouse didn't finish paying their attorney. Something might have happened. But anyway, make sure your marriage is legal. Stumbling block number 2. Stumbling block number 3 are individuals that are living here without permission. It can happen basically 2 ways. Either they entered without inspection or they entered legally, but they overstayed. Now, in many cases, especially those that enter without inspection, unless they can meet one of the exceptions to going to an interview here in the United States, they're going to have to go abroad. They're going to have to go back home. And that raises questions having to do with the consular processing of unlawful presence and perhaps not being able to come back to the U.S. for 10 years, for 3 years, 10 years, or even longer. So that could be a problem. Same thing with an overstay. Overstays sometimes overstay, but then they go back and somehow they manage to come back in, but they've broken the period, or they come back in and they don't tell the consulate everything accurately, and they're able to come back in the second time, maybe not on a visitor's visa, maybe on a student visa, or vice versa. And they have issues, again, with unlawful presence. It's going to cause problems at the interview. Those are the types of issues that if you're trying to immigrate someone through a marriage, make sure you've covered those. And because of these issues, I strongly think individuals should not try to do this alone. And I've heard many cases, oh, my uncle did it alone, my cousin did it alone. No, 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 no. These issues are too complex, too complicated, too technical, that you really should see an attorney and at least discuss the issues before you file papers. And you've got to be totally honest. It's that simple. You have to be totally honest or an attorney can't help you with that. Number 4 is almost a no-brainer, convictions. If you have any kind of convictions, you may have to deal with it when the immigrant goes to the interview. If the immigrant has convictions, you may have to deal with it when the immigrant goes to the interview. Now, I've seen it situations where immigrants don't want to reveal the whole truth. And because they don't reveal the whole truth, they think, well, my conviction was 30 years ago. It's not going to count. No. The immigrations can count. Even minor convictions in terms of state law can be major convictions in terms of immigration law. Again, this is a technical issue. This is one of those issues that individuals should not be trying to handle on their own. They really need some professional assistance to sort through this issue and to see if they can work through it so that they can be successful and walk out of that immigration interview knowing that the immigrant spouse is now a green card holder. The 5th issue is financial support. Now, there's an affidavit support requirement. It's 125% of the poverty line. Now, this is an issue I think that should never trip anyone up, especially if you're getting professional assistance. This is going to be spotted right away when you turn in income taxes. What I have seen is individuals come to my office and they haven't reported their taxes in full, or they haven't paid their taxes, or that they have penalties, or that they've marked boxes wrong. For instance, they said they were married 7 years before they were married. And so they've got to amend the tax returns. They've got to go back, go to a tax preparer, go to an accountant, clean it up legally. Then you come back with amended tax returns, and then you submit it in terms of the affidavit support. Now, even that doesn't guarantee that they would meet the 125% of the poverty line. But there's other ways to meet that. I mean, you can get an uncle, you can get an aunt, you can get a brother, you can get a sister, you can get someone to co-sponsor you. So I don't believe this issue should ever trip anyone up. But I've seen it. People have come to my office after the fact. And yeah, normally we can clean it up. But it shouldn't trip people up in the beginning. So here's 5 quick issues that you should be aware of when you're trying to immigrant a spouse through marriage. Make sure that the marriage is real. Make sure that the marriage is legal. Make sure that there's no entry or overstay issues that could undermine the application. watch out for convictions, and be sure your finances are in proper order before you submit the affidavit of support documents. So with that, I hope I've been able to give you some insight into problems that can trip you up and that you avoid them. And I'll be talking to you again soon in another video.